answer.
That's right.
You seem to be seated in your car.
I am seated in my car. It's
Okay.
one of the lovely things about living in small town America is we don't have internet at home that's fast enough to do video chatting. So
Okay.
if I was at home, I can only really check email, and so I'm in my car at the local, I guess it's the town hall, and
Okay.
I have wireless here. Um,
Okay. Okay. I
so
used to do, yes, in most of the public libraries, they have good connection. I used to do that while in Naugatuck and
yeah,
also while in on the other side. Yeah, in Anselmo in Marin County also. Great.
really, yeah.
That's
So
a good solution. Yeah.
it was funny because when COVID first happened, there
Mm-hmm.
was our national news did a story on whether, like urban Americans versus rural Americans and who has internet, who can take part still in education and the economy. And they actually came to our small town here and they took pictures of where I'm sitting now as the place that
Mm-hmm.
has no internet. So right. So
Okay.
yes, I'm in the car, and in about an hour or so, I think there'll be a lot of people here as the sun comes up, and we all just line up in our vehicles and check our internet.
That would be real news for those here in India. Of course, here too, some keep moving from one place to another. When we had the faculty development program, we had one
Yeah,
of the faculty, in fact, 2 kilometers away from his home place, sitting under a tree with an umbrella in the
right.
rain and with his mobile joining
Yeah,
in.
yeah. I mean, it's
Great.
you have to do what you have to do at this point, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah. So we have your colleague here, Bipul. I can see you. So after a long
Yeah.
time, this plan to make the two geographers to meet together is happening at last.
Yes,
Thanks
Father.
to
Thank you,
COVID
Father.
again.
Yes, Father.
Thanks to COVID.
Thanks to COVID. Yes, Father. Okay, Father. With due permission
Yep.
from you, I
Yeah.
guess we
Ready.
can start
Sure.
with the program.
Sure. Sure.
Good afternoon to one and all, and good morning, of course, to our resource person of the day, Sir Aaron Kingsbury, who is at US presently. I, Dr. Vipul Chetri, Assistant Professor in the Department of Geography, Salesian College, Siliguri, would like to welcome you all to our fourth day of National Webinar Series on Communities and Food System, Land Labor Migration, jointly organized by the Department of Economics and Department of Geography in collaboration with IQSC Salesian College, Siliguri. I would like to welcome our speaker, Dr. Aaron Kingsbury, Assistant Professor of Arts and Science, Maine Maritime Academy University, US. We are really honored to have him here, sir. We welcome you. I also would like to welcome Father Principal, Professor George Thathathan, Principal and Chairman, IQAC Salesian College, Siliguri, to our fourth day of National Webinar. I also welcome Father George Champakatanal, Vice Principal, Arts and Humanities, and Father Aju Kurian, Vice Principal, Science, to our webinar. May I now request Father Principal to kindly share his few words among us.
Thank you, Dr. Bipul. I am indeed very happy that this event is happening. And in this series of lectures that your department, in collaboration with the economics department of ours, which in a way, though an old department, but as an honors department is young, and here in Siliguri, have come up with this very vital and a significant topic and series of themes in these days. Honestly, to speak, I've had quite a few people calling up, even from the print media, for greater information as to what exactly is happening in these series. And I don't know if you checked in the local newspaper, there would have been a report today, or it's coming tomorrow from what you all have managed to do. So congratulations. Thank you for taking these initiatives and identifying the right persons talking on the right topic. That's my first point. Secondly, as I welcome Dr. Aaron Kingsbury to our today's lecture, let me give to my participants a bit of a historical background to how Dr. Bipul and Dr. Aaron met. Dr. Bipul invited Dr. Aaron met. Dr. Bipul invited Dr. Aaron, and they have both met together here in this Siliguri campus, thanks to two associations called the Asia Network in the US of 160 colleges, and an association called All India Association of Christian Higher Education, which has over 500 members here in India. Fortunately or unfortunately, right now I am, for this present term, the president, and I should be happy to let even Aaron know that the forthcoming president of Asia Network, Dan Shoffness, was here with us after you all were with us here. And we are working on an MOU between these two networks so that individual faculty like Bipul or anyone else across the board could connect with each other, do joint research, do joint webinars, and have student exchange and faculty once that is possible. So this, my dear friends, is the background with which Dr. Aaron was able to be on our campus, and that from then on there was this desire that they should do a joint paper. And I'm very happy that both of you are getting connected, and our economics, geography, sociology, and political science departments would really stand to gain in and through this collaboration. Thirdly, coming to the topic, though I am not the expert, but I simply love the combination of the title that you have put as rural reality here in Darjeeling too, and we are going to hear about it as a case study with regard to Japan, which is the focus of study of our resource person today. We have, for example, an urban campus, let's say, of Siliguri, and a rural campus of Sonada. So Salesian College is a urban community, an academic community. And talking for instance of tea, the tea gardens are there in the plains and in the hills, and it's what is tea? It's a cup of tea really in everyone's home, whether one is in Hamburg or in Maine or in New York or in Darjeeling or in Delhi. At the same time, the tea is also rural because where it is grown is in these highlands and in these hinterlands and in these plains of the sub-Himalayan Eastern Himalayas. So I guess we have every reason to look at how food systems and practices have evolved and have urban connotation. With these few words and with a warm welcome, over to you. Thank you.
Over to me.
Thank you.
Or Bipul? Yeah.
To people.
Thank you for your valuable insights and appreciation, and sharing the story of how me and Aaron met in the informal meeting that we had. That too, the opportunity that was provided by Salesian College. And now, may I now invite Miss Bhavna Khati, assistant professor in the Department of Geography, Salesian College, Siliguri, to introduce our speaker to all.
Yeah, thank you, Bipul sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Aaron Kingsbury, on this fourth day of the webinar series. Today, Dr. Kingsbury will deliver us some deep insights from his work on rural-urban communities in transition, a case study from Japan. Highlighting Dr. Kingsbury's academic journey, I would like to mention that his academic achievements have been very dynamic and versatile, for he is the holder of 2 master's degrees, one a Master's of Arts in Geography from Simon Fraser University in Canada, and another a Master of Science in International Ecological Agriculture from the University of Kassel in Germany. He acquired his PhD degree in geography from the University of Hawaii in the USA, where he focused on the grape and wine industries of Japan. Dr. Kingsbury served as an assistant professor of geography for 5 years at a university in rural North Dakota before moving to Maine Maritime Academy in 2018. His research interests include Asian studies, especially Japan, contemporary northern Vietnam and Mongolia, food and agriculture, wine and tea production, rural places, interpreting history from landscapes, locations of primary resource extraction, and geospatial technologies, including SUAVs or drones. Presently, he serves as a research advisor for the Agriculture and Forestry Research and Development Center for mountainous regions in Vietnam. With this introduction, I once again welcome you, sir, and we look forward to gain valuable knowledge from such an interesting session this afternoon. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Forward to you, sir.
Ma'am, thank you, ma'am Bhavna. May I now request our speaker, Sir Aaron Kingsbury, to kindly take over the session, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. So thank you, people. Thank you, Father George. Thank you. Is it Dr. Kati? I didn't hear the
Yeah,
name.
Dr. Bhavna Kati. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to see everybody again. I should tell you that I am actually speaking from my truck, my vehicle. I am in a small town in Maine, and Maine is in the northeastern part of the United States, up on the Canadian border. And one of the great things about living in this part of the country, this is a joke, is we don't have we don't have internet at home usually. So I am in the parking lot of the local city hall, picking up Wi-Fi at 5:30 this morning. It's a bit dark, but the sun is coming up, and soon I'll be able to turn off my cell phone light, and you'll be able to see my happy smiling face. So thanks for having me. I am new to this Google thing, so let me see if I can figure out how to get I go present now. Present my entire screen. And let me see. I want to share the content. Check to share. And for some reason now. Are you able to see my screen?
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming. Okay.
Full screen.
Give me 1 second. Can you see now?
Yeah, it's possible.
Perfect. Proceed.
Perfect. So I guess how this works is I don't have any way of seeing your comments or questions as we go. So if there are things as I talk, I would encourage you to just speak vocally so I can hear you, because all I see is my own screen as well. So yes, urban communities in transition, case studies from Japan. I should back up and say that I've lived in Japan almost 10 years. My wife is Japanese. I was a farmer in Japan for a long time. I farmed rice. I was a grape farmer. I don't know how many of you are interested in Japan or have a lot of Japanese experience, but I will try to present this in such a way that it'll be interesting. I have a lot of photographs, and then we can discuss this sort of urban sort of setup within the context of India and Japan and even the United States if you're interested. So at the top right, you see grapes, and I should back up and say a lot of this research comes out of my interest in East Asian or Asian, generally speaking, grape and wine production. And then at the bottom, it's important, you see the kind of trellised, those are grapes, and then there's apartment buildings right next to it. And so this becomes a theme throughout today's entire presentation. So here's Japan. You see Tokyo in the middle there, and what we're talking about today is a place called Yamanashi Prefecture, which, although it's right next to Tokyo, is the countryside, and people consider it the countryside, but it's an hour, 2 hours from Tokyo by high-speed train. And I'm not going to get into the details of where exactly we're talking about, but recognize that this map here is Yamanashi Prefecture, and the gray parts are the center of grape and, importantly, wine production in Japan. So when I say wine here, I'm referring to like grape wine, like you'd have in Europe or California somewhere. And it comes out of a grape growing tradition where farmers could not afford rice wine, which was the preferred beverage. And so they took whatever leftover grapes they couldn't sell on the fresh market, and they just threw them in big buckets and fermented them. And they used that as their alcohol of choice. And there's a lot of information on this map, and the only thing I want to point out is if you look in the red box there, we have something called the Tago Mountain. And today's entire presentation is going to be focused on this one small little mountain outside of a place called Kofu City in Yamanashi Prefecture. The mountain is not important in terms of Japanese history. The mountain is not unique in terms of Japanese history or culture. But I want to use the mountain as a focus to understand this sort of land use change across urban Japan more generally. And then we'll see if we can link it to India or the United States. So we're geographers, we like overhead images. This is 1975, and you can see in green there. Can you see this? Somebody still there?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, good. So what you see in 1975, this green area, this is the mountain. And I say mountain, I put it in quotes, like air quotes, because it's not really a mountain, it's a hill, right? So this is a small little hill on the outskirts of a sort of a small city that nobody really cares about. Let's put it that way. So 1975, by 2018, you can see that it's built up quite a bit. And if you do the comparison, you can see that, well, between the 1970s and more recently, the city of Kofu has expanded. Again, it's not a terribly important city by Japanese standards, but comparable to cities across the country, it's developing quite quickly. And it's coming at the expense, in this case, of agricultural land. And so I was able to live here for a number of years for other reasons, but this is what the landscape looks like. And so you see, that's the mountain in the background, at least under the 2019, you see that kind of sloping area. Anything in green that you see, if it's not a tree, it's going to be grape production. So these are grapes that are trellised up. I believe Indian grapes are often trellised up as well, and the idea is that it allows for wind to blow underneath them to keep the mold and pest pressures down during rainy season. All right, so if you look closely, there's me in the bottom left. Like I said, I lived there for about 2.5 years. I was a grape farmer. I was there during a lot of my doctoral dissertation research. If you look in the center photograph, there's me with the Adidas jacket. The woman in the hat became my wife, and she's currently sleeping at home, laughing because I had to get up at 4 to do this presentation. So, like I said, I was able to live there for a couple of years. I was a grape farmer. In the bottom, you see me socializing with grape farmers. I became a professional grape farmer as part of my dissertation research. So why am I so interested in this mountain? That's the mountain. And so those of you in the Himalayas recognize that's not a mountain. But in the context of this part of Japan, that is a mountain. In the history of Japanese wine and grape production, next to this location is the center of where this all started. So when I was living here, I would go on a daily basis to this neighboring community and do my field work and talk to people because that was my focus of my dissertation. I would come home, sit in front of my house, look at the mountain, socialize with my girlfriend then, which became my wife, and we would spend every evening looking at this location. And slowly I became interested in why it was such a patchwork of agriculture and housing, and it was a daily experience, put it that way. It's a place that you can see historical changes in real time, and when we look at urban policy, I'll discuss this more in detail. In the bottom right, it's okay, so you see on the bottom right, on the right side of the picture of the bottom right, that's an apartment building. That's where we used to sit. On the left, there's a new structure there that was never there before. Before you could sit there and view the mountain, right? So you had this constant visualization of the mountain wherever you went. And now when I went back last year, this new sort of senior citizen home was completed there. The farmer that used to have the grapes decided intentionally to sell the grapes to make money, etc. The mountain itself is not unique in that it is a lot of the farmland is abandoned. In Japan, with industrialization, with urbanization, rural spaces, it makes more sense for Japanese to import food, and so a lot of the small-scale farmers don't exist anymore. And so this on the left is a friend of mine's son, and I took him up on the mountain, and what you see is a lot of abandoned farmland. And he says, hey, this is great, I feel like an explorer. All right, so the more time you spend in this location, you realize that you can see the history in the landscape of the place, is my point. I've taken American students up there, the bottom left. You can see on the right, you see abandoned.
Aaron, I think you have to get back to the screen sharing. We don't see the screen. We are seeing you now.
You're seeing me now. All right. So let's start again. Let's see. Do you see me now? Or let's try this again. Present. Window. Am I back?
Now your screen is back. Continue.
All right. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. So you have this mountain. It's not really a mountain. You have this hill, and there's a lot of abandoned farmland on it. So when you're walking up above it, it feels a little bit wild. It's exciting. Wild boar have come back. So you see something here that you don't see in other parts of Japan, where, well, people are hunting, which is quite common in places like the United States, but in Japan it's not. I've taken American students up there. We did a whole research study on wild boar, looking at how they've come back. The point is, as you walk around this place, see in the upper right, you see the fallen sort of, those are grape trellises. All of that vegetation is stuff that's grown since somebody abandoned the farmland. So you have a lot of abandoned land, the land gets abandoned, and then you have these boar coming back. So looking at it from, like, theoretically from a Japanese perspective, when you're looking at Japanese peri-urban, or sort of these areas that blend urban and rural together, spaces, you have a fragmentation of land use. Common to these spaces, or common to agriculture across Japan, you have a very aging workforce. And again, this is fruit production rather than rice, and the Japanese government has always done quite a bit to protect the rice industry. Fruit protection is not, fruit farming has not been protected in similar ways. So you start to see, over the last 20, 30 years, more abandoned farmland. You have younger people that will move to places like Tokyo, which again is only about an hour and a half away. And so in these sort of peripheral spaces, you get urban decline, and you'll see abandoned houses, etc. So when a lot of us think of Japan, we think of sort of modern, industrialized, high-tech, manga, anime, sort of flashy lights, Tokyo. But these are these peripheral rural spaces or peri-urban spaces that are just not quite as cool as what a lot of people think about when they think about Japan. Some other major topics going around here is the Japanese government has put a lot of money, put a lot of effort into sort of rural revitalization. And this presentation really looks at the space of Otago Mountain and says, you know, we have these peripheral spaces that have not benefited from this investment in the same way that other places have. So simultaneously, what's happening in the area around this is we have a development of sort of the wine industry. This whole region is known for wine in Japan, and over the last 5 to 10 years, they've developed a wine industry, wine tourism, tourism more generally. There's individual tourism, urban tourism to places like Kofu for a variety of reasons. But this small mountain is symbolic of a place that's not benefiting the same way that the rest of the region is. So if we go back to Otago Mountain, this is the mountain. And so again, those of you coming from the Himalayan region, the hills, this is a small hill, but it's important that you look and you see in the middle of that hill here, we do have some structures, and there's a unique history of these structures as well that we'll talk about shortly. So backing up, if we look at this region, grapes have been produced here since around the year 600. Around 1868, Japan opens up to the world in a way that it hadn't done in a long time. And they sent a lot of experts all across the world to understand table grape farming, as well as a number of other things. And so what ends up happening is you have experts that come back to this region of Japan. It's close enough to Tokyo where people start planting grapes. And as they plant grapes, like I mentioned before, farmers wanted to drink alcohol. Beer was not available. Rice wine was, rice for rice wine was protected. So they end up taking grapes that they couldn't sell and fermenting them in what's called sort of a collective winery, which is like all the farmers bring their semi-rotten grapes to one place. It's fermented, and then after fermentation, they can take back.
Hello, Aaron, your screen is half visible. If you could kindly,
My screen is half visible?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Half part of screen, it's not visible. Only 50% is being shown. You could kindly rectify that.
Let's try again. I'm sharing my. Is that any better?
Yeah, now it's okay, Aaron.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. The technology on my side is not great here. So if you look at the history of the mountain, on the right, you can see these are trees. These are cedar trees. And the cut down part is mulberry. So this region is known for, it used to be silk production. The cedar trees were planted after the war as a quick growing timber. So as you're walking through sort of these rural landscapes on this quote unquote mountain, you can see the agricultural history within the landscape that's there. So again, it has a history of grape farming. You can see on the left these grape farmers. The tradition was that you would grow grapes, and then consumers in more urban spaces would fax in their orders, and you'd get quite a bit of money for selling your table grapes to urban markets. This is before Japan opened up to sort of the international market for fruits. And so some of the major grapes, one is Koshu. If you are Japanese speaking, the name on the box on the left is the name of the winery that was sold and then destroyed where my apartment building was actually built. So you can see that. And on the right, we have Delaware grapes, which originate in the United States, which were brought to Japan and then became sort of a known or more popular, more famous Japanese grape. So again, I don't want to get into all of this detail, but the point is that on the left, you see all of these different varieties of grapes. And so grape farmers in Japan were able to make a considerable amount of money. They would stagger their crops, and they had their markets organized in places like Tokyo and Osaka and farther away. And you could make a living as a farmer just selling grapes. So in the upper left, this is just a little before World War II. If I'm not mistaken. You can see a lot of young people. These are all grape farmers on this mountain. As you move to the right, you see the young, I don't remember, 1960s, 1970s. And at the bottom, you have grape farming today. And possibly you'll notice that most of the farmers here are over the age of 65. So it's now a senior citizen type of enterprise. So tourism to the region, wine tourism, very popular nearby. This mountain area developed as a place where people from Tokyo could arrive and look at grapes. So this was an era when grapes were exotic. If you were living in a place like Tokyo, you would arrive at the neighboring sort of city of Kofu City, the train station. You would take a bus to the vineyards, and you would spend an entire day under the vineyards, drinking juice, eating grapes, recreating in the rural landscape, so to speak. They did a lot of U-picks, where you'd pay money and pick a certain amount for a certain period of time. You'd have lunches under the vines. There's a lot of pictures of people all dressed up in suits and ties and fancy dresses, sitting under the grapes, getting eaten by mosquitoes, I guess. And so that's all changed. Now grapes are no longer exotic. This is the mountain today. On the left, you see the higher trees and the higher sort of the overgrowth. This was all vineyards. I met a senior lady, and she started telling me the story of where you could kind of see the little trellising there. And she said when she was a young child, her parents would have the vineyards, and people would come and sit, like I said before, under the vineyards and have tea and socialize and whatnot. And it's all gone. And the house in the upper right is an abandoned structure, which is important. But you see a lot of these abandoned structures in this kind of area in this part of Japan. This was also an era when people would get in buses, drive to someplace, and you can see these are grapes in the foreground here. That's the mountain in the background. And have a big meal and sit and eat grapes and discuss whatever. These are all now abandoned, right? So we have a transition where going to U-picks, sitting under the grapes, then later getting into a bus, driving to a vineyard, having a group meal with 50 other people. This is all changed, right? So you no longer have this type of tourism as being popular in Japan. Let's skip that. So one of the things that also happens is varieties of grapes change. The initial varieties of grapes have to be are cut down. The Japanese prefer seedless grapes, and so grape production has changed. Throughout the 1990s, again, you have these grapes that are trellised above, and we had a large snow, which meant that the trellises broke, and so there was a lot of vineyards that got destroyed at this point. And farmers started making decisions whether they wanted to stay in fruit production or do something else with their land. It's still important. There's still a collective sort of theme going on here, but slowly we're seeing more and more people leaving grape farming intentionally. And this is important because it's stating that farmers actively have agency in the decision to sell their land for money. And this is very radically different than what most studies on Japanese peri-urban spaces discuss. And so you see a lot of sort of leftovers in the landscape. On the left, these are old structures. So this is next to like a suburban recent development right in front of the mountain. And these are old grape structures, right? These are pieces of wood that were used to build grape structures. And they're just sort of left there. On the right, you see an abandoned house, which was built at some point. Somebody sold their land. They built this nice house with a view of Kofu, and then eventually the whole region became abandoned, and you have this sort of overgrowth. So the important thing here is that farmland loss and redevelopment is not an automatic process, but it's a matter of local agency. Farmers themselves are using their land as an asset, both for farming but also for sales. And I'll give you two examples in just one second. In the 1980s, the Japanese economy went through what's called a bubble economy. This is when Japan really took off economically and people became quite wealthy. And as people became wealthy, there was pressure from a lot of wealthier people and from real estate developers to take this mountain, and what used to be all grapes, and sell your vineyards, turn it into a high-end sort of housing for wealthy people. They could have a view of the city or whatever else, and you don't have a lot of coherent city planning. And so what you're left with is this sort of chaotic patchwork of urban and agricultural land use. You have a mountain that has sort of high-class housing with a view of Mount Fuji, but many of this, as I just showed you, the photographs are largely abandoned. And Japan now is looking to sort of industrialize its farming, which means they want to get larger scale farming. But of course, in this kind of location, that's impossible because of the mixed development, where you have an urban land use and then sort of suburban land use, and then in between that you have grapes. You can't get bigger in this case. I look at two farmers to look at the sense of agency they have when producing, when making decisions. We'll say example number one, we'll call him or her Kei-san. He has no successor, which means when he passes away, all of his grapes will disappear. He doesn't have a son that's interested in farming. He's made strategic choices. He knows that he doesn't have a future. There's no future for his farming. So he's strategically sold pieces of land, which has allowed him to build a brand new house for his family. So he has recognized that there's no future in farming for his family. So rather than worry about that, he's actually sold off his land intentionally, much of which has been on this mountain, to buy himself and his future generations a house. And so his house is right next door, and this is his son's new house, which was purchased with agricultural land money. Another example, we'll say Ai-san. This individual sold a considerable amount of land up on the mountain, and then he's used this money to reinvest in land off the mountain, and he has successors. So what he's intentionally done is he said, well, there's a future in my family for farming. Rather than use this desired land here up high on the mountain, we're going to shift and buy less expensive land off the mountain. And he's been able to make a considerable amount of money with his grapes by selling this farmland. So the area itself has been, what you have left is you have the very top of the mountain. You have sort of a children's sort of park that most people don't really use or go up to. You have this sort of fractured landscape where you have sort of abandoned farmland. You have spaces where people are farming, and then you have the new trend, which is putting in solar panels, because there's more money to be made in energy than there is in any sort of agriculture in the Japanese context today. And so you get, again, this sort of fractured landscape. You see the bamboo. This is in front of a Buddhist temple, but you also see the grapes behind it. You see the house, and then further up you have an abandoned house and some solar panels as well. And then, I think most of us, when we perceive Japan, we don't imagine buildings like this. But this is a building that was built, a housing complex, where, again, people want to live in the city. They don't want to live in the countryside usually now in Japan. And so the building itself became abandoned, and so you have, on the mountain, you have this structure that's, well, you can't use it anymore because there's a tree growing out of it. So the point is that local agency itself shapes peri-urbanization, and this is different than most Japanese studies that's where we're looking at like top-down approaches from policy. This is a bypassed space, so it shares a history with a nearby region that's become quite popular for grapes and wine. But the region, this mountain itself, does not benefit from these rapidly developing tourism industries. It's close to, or it's part of the neighboring city of Kofu, but it's not revitalizing the same way that Kofu is. So Kofu has a new downtown, it has a new train station. This is sort of a leftover space that's been forgotten. And I guess that's it. Stop sharing. Hello?
Yes, sir. Hello. Yes, Aaron.
Yes, so that was the conclusion. It says my battery is running low now too, so we should move quickly to questions.
Okay. If our participants have got any questions to ask, the forum is open for the questions. Anybody who's ever feels like
I do apologize if my computer cuts out. I have no battery. That's what's happening now. I do apologize.
Okay. Let's see if there are any questions, Aaron. Okay, Aaron, there is a question from Noel Giri. How do you see concept of bubble economy in context of India and Japan agricultural basis? Is it harmful for agricultural practices?
For Japan, I would say yes. For India, that's out of my area of expertise. One of the things that happened with Japan is when their economy became so strong. Of course, it did have positive influences in farming because you had a sort of higher technology farming. You had better production practices, etc. But at the same time, if you look at Japan today, there is nobody that wants to be a farmer. As the economic situation in Japan has developed, if you're a young person, the first thing you want to do is leave the countryside and move to the city and get a job, wearing a tie or a dress or something, where you're not working in sort of a dangerous, dirty environment. Within the context of India, I don't know. You'd have to tell me. Do young Indians want to farm? I don't think so.
All right, Aaron, your battery is showing indication of it's getting low. Again, let's see if there are any questions there. All right, we do not have any questions here for Aaron. All right, since his battery is getting low. So now may I request our Father Principal to kindly share his words before us. All right. Sorry. Yeah. Father Principal has had already dropped a message saying that he would be attending some of the important meetings there since he is busy with a different schedule there. All right. Now, may I take this opportunity to call Ma'am Debusmita Datta, Assistant Professor.
Yes, sir. Yes, Vipul, sir.
Yes, ma'am. You can deliver vote to our resource person.
Yes. Respected keynote speaker, Father Principal, Vice Principal of Science, Vice Principal of Arts, fellow colleagues, and beloved students, on behalf of the Department of Economics, the Department of Geography, IQAC, Salesian College, Siliguri, I take this opportunity to present my warm gratitude and present a vote of thanks for today's webinar session. At the outset, I would like to thank the keynote speaker, Dr. Aaron Kingsbury, for gracing this webinar and providing us with such a valuable insight on a very pertinent topic of discussion in the current socio-economic atmosphere in our country. Urban communities in transition, case studies from Japan. The beautiful elaboration about the Kofu Basin and the Otago Mountain with its abandoned farmland zoning for urban redevelopment as a result of the bubble economy was indeed thought-provoking. The fact that the country is very modern but it is not as advanced, but the peripheral spaces are not as advanced as the other modern cities of Japan was quite noteworthy. My sincere gratitude to Father Principal George Thadatil, the IQAC chairperson, for his continuous and encouraging support to all of us. I would also extend my gratitude to Vice Principal of Science, Father Ajju Kurian, who is also the IQAC coordinator, for his untiring support always. My sincere gratitude also goes to Vice Principal of Arts, Father C.J. George, for inspiring us all throughout. I also profoundly thank the tech team of Salesian College Shiliguri for their proactive role in organizing webinars and providing the constant technical support. Warmest thanks to the entire team, especially Ms. Yadika Prasad, for helping us energetically in every way possible. I would like to conclude my speech by thanking all the students and other wonderful participants without whom the webinar wouldn't have been as successful as it was. I highly appreciate your presence and hope to see you tomorrow with the same energy and enthusiasm. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Vipul, can you hear me?
Yes, Father.
I can understand that these kind of eventualities can happen,
All right.
but I guess among the listeners, I see 63 of them. There could easily be people who could continue along with you and Vicky a little bit of the discussion in the light of what has emerged. Of course, it is not my cup of tea in the sense, but I could, if I had the time, join in a conversation. For example, let me just throw one question before you all. Rather than just rounding up and then packing up, I'm just offering this suggestion. There was that question yesterday about environment economics. How environmental degradation and agriculture, to what extent it is a hyped reality, whether it is a misinformation, whether we are going to place the environmental hazard, of biodegradation originating from agricultural source on the same footing as the other sources of biodegradation. I'm just thinking through, having listened these past days with you all, and just throwing in the bait, as it were. Could you hold a discussion and see whether there are anyone responding? And if nothing happens, well and good. But I thought we could spend at least a few